Let me bring you songs from the woods to make you feel much better than you could know. Better than you could know.
Hello everybody, this is a June 2021 Naturia deck profile. So in the past I've done Naturia trap tricks, but this time I wanted to keep it pure Naturia. I really haven't included too many cards from outside the archetype, outside of a Borlo Dragon in the extra deck, some generic staples in the main deck, but for the most part this is pure, true Naturia, which does mean that it will have some trouble versus newer decks. Of course, Naturia is a very old archetype. I don't think it was ever considered to be too strong anyways, but if you can pull off a few lucky wins here and there using this deck, then you have accomplished the goal of using Naturia in 2021. So, 3 Antja. This is the most underrated Naturia monster in the main deck because it does special from the deck, a level 3 or lower monster. Every time your opponent special summons. So it's not only not a hard once per turn, but it is not even a once per turn. So if you just normal summon an Antja and end your turn, when your opponent special summons once, you can special summon a second Antja. When they special summon again, use both Antjas to summon 2 more monsters. So one original Antja pretty quickly and pretty easily turns into 4 monsters, and you typically won't want to summon the third because you'll run out of main monster zones. But this is just how you fill up your board and get more materials for synchro summons. 3 Cherry, so this is primarily the level 1 tuner, which is the most versatile level when it comes to synchro summoning. But this is also one of the few Yu-Gi-Oh cards that actually accesses a copy of itself from the deck, Tune Table of Contents being another example. But if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you get to special up to 2 copies of itself from the deck. So sometimes you can normal summon Antja and end your turn, maybe a couple traps set, but sometimes you don't see Antja and you have to just normal set Cherries, and then there is a chance that they'll run over this card or that they'll pop it if they don't know what it is, especially if it's set, and you'll have some kind of plus, some kind of play being made on your opponent's turn. 3 Pumpkin. So this is an example of a card in this build that would theoretically, optimally, be something else. It does special from the hand, but it has a few downsides. It has to be normal summoned. You have to special summon a Naturia monster from your hand, which in my build is not a problem. But if you were including other archetype cards, it could be a downside. And also your opponent has to control a monster. But for the more typical Naturia plays, instead of just abusing Antja, this card just specials from the hand. It's how you can hopefully go into a synchro in 1 turn. 2 Bamboo Shoot. So just to prove that I do have a 3rd ultimate rare Bamboo Shoot, here it is. But I'm running 2. So this card is potentially game breaking because if your opponent is using a spell or trap heavy deck, it is possible that they will not have any plays to be made at all. It's a one-sided Imperial Order and Royal Decree, but you do have to tribute a Naturia monster and tribute summon this card. It can be hard to pull off. Even in the TCG, it is not a horrible card. It's still actually pretty decent. The thing is, it does have 2,000 attack, so it can be run over fairly easily, but in something like Duel Links, this card would be completely broken. 2 Cosmo Beat. Mainly the level 2 tuner, but also a free special summon when your opponent normal summons. So potentially your opponent can go first, normal summon a monster. You can special summon this card from your hand. They, because it's the first turn of the duel, won't be able to attack into it. And then if you also have Bamboo Shoot in your hand, when your turn comes around, you can tribute summon Bamboo Shoot on your first turn. 2 Butterfly, so this is the level 3 tuner. I also do run 1 other level 3 tuner, but this card is a good one to special off the deck with Antja because it does have a useful effect on your opponent's turn. You get to mill a card and stave off 1 attack, and if you do special both of them off of 2 Antjas, you can stave off 2 attacks, which hopefully is enough to preserve you some materials, some monsters to use as synchro materials the next turn. For some 1-ups, Horn Needle, Dragonfly, and Stink Bug. So Horn Needle can miss timing, very similar to Cliff and to Eggplant. If you special this card off of Antja, then hopefully you will have other Naturia monsters on the field to tribute and then destroy a special summon monster. But it is a when you can effect. So if special summoning a monster is not the last thing to happen, it will miss timing, but I thought it was the most useful of the ones that can miss timing, and it is some kind of interruption potentially. Dragonfly can be a beater if you use a bunch of materials as synchro material. This card can have a lot of attack. And Stink Bug, similar to, it is a level 3 tuner like Butterfly, but it does stop attacks. It actually ends the battle phase. So better than Butterfly in that regard, but also you do have to send it to the graveyard, so you're losing that monster. Also, Butterfly can mill to stop the attack, and that can be useful for Monster Reborn. So 3 Ash Blossom, this is just still the staple card. Why this common Ash Blossom goes for $30 a piece, because it just goes in just about any deck, just the universal hand trap and staple of choice that goes in so many decks and just makes your old deck much more modernized. So spells, 3 Duality, 2 Desires, 2 Extravagance. So I think Duality at 3 is an okay call here, because sometimes you are special summoning off of Pumpkin, but for the most part you're just normal summoning Antjaw. That's the ideal play, and ending your turn, no special summoning happening on your turn. So Duality is, of course, besides the restriction, a very good card because it lets you choose from among 3 cards instead of just hoping to draw that one spell or trap or monster. Desires, Extravagance, these are just additional draw power cards. I tailored the extra deck to have 3 or at least 2 of the most important cards for Extravagance. Desires, you really don't need any one specific card in this deck. The win condition, to be honest, admittedly is kind of vague to begin with, but I think running 3 Desires would be a mistake. Even 3 Extravagance is kind of risky, so I like the draw engine the way I have it here. 2 Landoids' Luminous Moss. This easily could be a 3 of, because it is quite good. It is similar to Dark Ruler No More. A downside compared to Dark Ruler No More would be that you have to control a Naturia monster. Also, another downside is that your opponent can activate monster effects in response to this, but I believe that your opponent will not be able to activate monsters' effects in the hand or graveyard when you activate this card, as opposed to cards they control. So this is still a pretty decent card in Naturia deck, and it could be bumped up to 3. 1 Leo Drake's Mane. So this card turns your cherries into a 3k beater, so it's just a normal summon, and you get a 3k beater with this card. So I think, beatdown being a fairly significant element of this deck, in addition to the negation-oriented synchros, I feel like this is a good call. Could potentially bump this up as well. 1 Miracle Synchro Fusion. So I've mentioned in the past that the fusion plays in Naturia are hard to pull off. This is true because sometimes, and it's very possible that the duel will not last long enough for you to have 2 synchros either on the field or in the graveyard. That said, this card can turn the duel around. If you do top deck this card and you have made some synchros after summoning the materials for them with Antjaw, maybe you have 1 in the graveyard, 1 on the field, you can go into something like a Gaia's Trio or an Exterio, which are decent cards, and I do feel that this is an okay call on this deck, and I just wanted to run the fusion monsters as well. 1 for 1. So this is just a special summon cherries from the deck. It can be hard to put more monsters on the field than just 1. Sometimes you don't need to with a card like Antjaw, which can put more monsters on your opponent's turn on the field. But this card just helps you normal summon Pumpkin or normal summon Dragonfly. And if you don't have access to cherries in your hand, you can special it from the deck. Monster Reborn is just to, boost up your field. In an older deck, put in Monster Reborn. Trap, Sacred Tree. So this deck lacks a proper search card. This is pretty much it, because you can, the main use is to tribute something like cherries or Cosmo Beat, which are both plants, to summon Antjaw, which is an insect, and you just want to have as quick access to Antjaw as possible. 2 Exterio's Fang. So this card is really not a whole lot better than Dark Bribe. It negates a spell or trap card, but you do have to send a card from your hand to the graveyard afterwards. And Dark Bribe, your opponent would draw a card. Really, the similarities are pretty pretty apparent. This card isn't that great, but again, it is a negation-oriented deck. This is a Naturia archetype card. I thought I would include it. And then Synchro Transmission. So this is a TCG exclusive that allows you to Synchro Summon on your opponent's turn. The reason this card is actually a great fit in this deck is because Antjaw does land you with more materials on your opponent's turn than you had on your turn. So being a trap is ideal. You can just surprise your opponent with Beast, Barkion, or Landoys, which is just more interruption for a deck that needs to have as much interruption as possible. So Synchros, 3 Beast, theoretically 3 Barkion, but I only have 2, and 3 Landoys. So I did put this Goyo Guardian in here because I only have 2 Barkion. I actually ordered a 3rd, but it hasn't come yet. But all of these cards, this Goyo Guardian does actually work in this deck too, because all of the deck is Earth, and you can make level 6 Synchros. But all of these cards are negation cards that can come into quite handy. I mean, Beast is of course the best of these for a few reasons, because for one thing, level 5 Synchros are the easiest to make and splashable in the most decks. Beast does send from deck to grave too, so you can potentially negate as many spells as you want per turn. And also spells are of course more common than traps. That's why Beast is typically better than Barkion. Barkion, not a bad card though. In Duel Links, Barkion can stop some of the top decks like Subterror or Paleozoic. Barkion's still a decent card. Landoys is the weak link of these 3, but this card is level 7 Synchros are slightly harder to make in the build the way I have it here. Also, you have to send 1 spell from your hand to the graveyard. Don't always have a spell, but it is a negate and destroy of a monster and its effect. So still all around good cards, all 3 of them. And of course 3 of each of these because of extravagance. 1 Leo Drake. So I thought this card would be necessary to run to complete this archetype. But of course it is outclassed by other level 9 Synchros. Trishula and Mistworm are cards that come to mind for generic level 9 Synchros. The thing is, those 2 cards require 2 non-tuners. This only requires 1 non-tuner, so could possibly be a bonus for this card, but of course it has no effect. So I think for the most part, it would be more optimal to run something like Trishula or Mistworm. Fusions, 2 or 1 Gaistrio, 1 Exterio. So just decent cards. Exterio has an edge over Gaistrio. I think it's fairly safe to say that you want to negate spells and traps more often than negating a card effect that targets exactly 1 card on the field. But the thing is, Exterio has to be made with Beast and Barkion specifically. This just requires 2 Earth Synchros, so depending on what you special summon from the deck with Antjaw, you may end up with 2 Landoises on the field, or a Landoys and a Beast, or even Goyo Guardian for that matter, which is in my extra deck right now. So Gaistrio is sometimes the only option you have. And so length just 3, 2 Halcover-Backs, 1 Borreload. Borreload, you could just insert the link 4 boss monster of choice here. Appaloosa, Borrelsword, I mean even Unchained Abomination, Saryuja's Cauldron, all could work fine. I just chose Borreload. These 2 Halcover-Backs, so it's very similar to my TG deck profile that I did. This is not a deck that extends past Halcover-Backs. So if you have 2 monsters on the field, a tuner and a tuner, something including a tuner, typically you can make the synchro that you want, and it's almost hurting you to go into Halcover-Backs because you generally don't have enough materials to make a synchro after you make Halcover-Backs. But you know, in a synchro-based deck with a lot of tuners, it should theoretically be a good idea to run Halcover-Backs anyway. That's pretty much the Naturia deck profile. At the end here, I just want to show a bunch of other Naturia cards that of course did not make the cut because they're pretty much useless. Hydrangea, Eggplant, Cliff, Pineapple, Mantis, Rosewhip, Ragweed, Fruit Fly, Guardian, White Oak, also Barkion's Bark, which you could side against a trap deck, and Naturia Forest. This card is not strong enough to put in the deck. If you want it to be the best, even for a pure Naturia deck, I wouldn't include Naturia Forest. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. See ya.
Poppies red and roses filled with summer rain to heal the wound